Hi everybody and welcome to Moneyman Towers, and I've got Mark Keohane again here after an interesting week of rugby, and we're just going to chat about the changes. We're going to chat about the handicap betting again, and we're going to chat about the biggest mistake that all punters make. So should be a good 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Mark, how you doing?
Good. I think a lot better than some Springboks laying in wait in Wellington this week.
Interesting week ahead. 3 changes to the team. What do you...
I think he's in a bit of a pickle at the back. He's lost Warwick Kalan through injuries, lost Nkosi through injury, he's now lost Mpimpi through injury. I think he's factored in Colby to be someone that comes off the bench kind of thing. That's why the move Jesse Kriel to the wing. From an athleticism point of view and a strength point of view, no problems with it, but Jesse Kriel was exposed very badly when he played against Argentina on the wing. He's played on the wing twice for the Springboks and he hasn't looked particularly good. So I think the All Blacks will look at that and look at a vulnerable back 3 effort from us, and not quite the back 3 we had in those tests against England.
Pretty tough set of hand he's been dealt with 3, 4 previously disadvantaged good players being injured.
Yeah, and I think that's what
does that add to his thinking and his pressure?
Without a doubt. You know, he still has to meet certain targets. He said he will meet those targets, and I think that's been his biggest thing of building squad depth, and not for 1 minute thinking he's got these players guaranteed to go to the World Cup. He could lose them a day out from the World Cup, and those numbers don't change. SARu have been insistent because of their promise to the government. He took that on board when he came in his role as director of rugby as well. He does see the bigger picture. I spoke to him earlier this week. I also spoke to Mark Alexander. I thought he'd been putting too much pressure on himself in the media by saying this result will define him, and if he loses...
He's been very emotionally reactive, hasn't he, I find?
Very, I think in the Rugby Championship, Mark Alexander said, look, if he's talking like that, he's putting pressure on himself because the executive have bought into his plan. They knew that there would be changes in most test matches. He took them through his thinking, how to build a squad of 30, how to meet the transformation targets, and they expected there would be hiccups. I think Mendoza was a big blow to everyone. They started well in Durban, had the England series win, they were on this emotional high, and I think he has struggled a little bit to kind of bounce back from that just as a coach. I think he's analysed that match with selections, kind of his strategic approach, substitutions, and he thinks in many respects he got it wrong. Talking to him after the Brisbane one, again, you know, the spread was 6.5 points Brisbane. We spoke about this a couple of days ago.
I advise people to stay away.
You said stay away. Anyone can win this, there won't be a score in it. I think that was your words. And it could have gone either way. I saw some media were calling it a disgrace, the result. Some of them called it a humiliation.
I mean, how you know, it never ceases to amaze me, the emotional vitriol that South African media and fans come up with after a performance like that. They lost the game by 5 points. They could have won it. The players played bad. A lot of the players needed to stand up and be counted after that game. It certainly wasn't a game plan. Rassie's coaching didn't lose that game.
No, if you look at it again, now let's put it into context. Australia played a 3-test series against Ireland. Yeah. Ireland won it 2-1. Yeah. People called it one of the great series in the last 10 years.
Those are the people that haven't watched much rugby.
It was 55 points all between the two sides. Everyone is raving about Ireland. What a magnificent effort it was. The All Blacks then go over there. They 6-0 down after 35 minutes to Australia. Everyone thinks this is the day. They come back and hammer them. 38 points they score. The next week they put 40 on them. They then put 46 with 7 changes on an Argentinian side that many people in the media now think are World Cup contenders based on 22 points. So let's take the All Blacks out of the equation and look back in that Brisbane test and say 1 out of 10 wins at Brisbane in that humidity, a 6.5 point spread, and they lost it by 5, and there was a gimme 7 they gave Australia with an overthrow. It was a fairly consistent result. 7th place for in the world.
Previous year, 2 draws.
2 draws, and 7th place for in the world. Very little to choose between the two teams. You know, I didn't think it was as bad as a lot of people thought. The actual game, I thought certain players were very poor in critical moments. I thought Faf de Klerk was poor. I thought Villy again struggled from the back, and there just wasn't that grunt from the back.
There wasn't sharpness. There was no. It was like they had one training session together, knock-ons, line-out mistakes. There was just schoolboy mistakes that blew that game. For me, I thought Glenn Jackson had a very poor game again. I think I'm always saying that when he referees a game. And the biggest thing, and many people might criticize me for this, but Sia Khaleesi looked, he didn't exhibit strong leadership skills on that field. To me, he was dismissed by Glenn Jackson. You know, he just seemed lost in terms of what he could and couldn't say. You know, he'd say something and Glenn Jackson would just dismiss him straight away. You wouldn't get that with the likes of Richie McCaw or Dwayne Vermeulen or anybody else. I was amazed. It was.
It's interesting you mentioned Dwayne Vermeulen's name there, because Sia Khaleesi was the first one at the press conference in Johannesburg when they were 24-3 down. They came back and won. When they said great leadership from you, he said no, great leadership from Dwayne Vermeulen. He said he pulled us in. He said he'd been there before, and that we could come back. And I think he fed off Dwayne's leadership.
Do you think Dwayne would be the captain if he was committed to more tests here, or they could get him here for more tests? Because for me, Dwayne Vermeulen is a type of player that makes everybody around him better. Warren Whiteley he goes back in the tackle. Sia Khaleesi looks a bit lost without someone like Dwayne. When Dwayne takes the ball, he gets crash ball, he gains the meters, always over the advantage line. He's colossal. And I think if Dwayne Vermeulen is in that side, they easily win that test against Australia.
I think the one reservation that I know that Rassie has with Dwayne is that he feels the captaincy and the additional pressures may detract from his personality within the team squad, and then also on the field. His belief is you have 5-6 leaders on the field, and the captain is the guy who runs out first and kind of takes on some media responsibilities, and they're trying to build that core of leadership. But the loose tray at the moment is just not working. Warren Whiteley has struggled since he's come back, and I think especially post that Vermeulen 2-test cameo, because he really came back from France wanting to prove a point to the South African public, and he was massive. He was massive in Bloemfontein. And you know, you take a guy like Kieran Reid, he looks at Dwayne Vermeulen, I think he sees an equal. I don't quite think he sees that when he looks at the current back row.
You know, I agree. I think that, you know, the Lucy's, they're 6, 7, 8 are too light. They don't have enough impact. And you know, when I played the game, whenever we always got to play with teams that had a good opener or a good blindside flanker. And when those guys made tackles and they push the other team back, it just lifts your entire team. You know, when guys are going back in the tackle and you're always going forward, you can't there's not enough. You can't say enough about it. And there's none of that with those guys.
Well, if you go back, the impressive performance that Dwayne had, I was disappointed in the Test series against England with Jean-Luc Deprez. He'd had this massive Super Rugby, but he will come. He's a big, imposing loose forward. You've got an Ackerman who's playing well for Gloucester. I think maybe another 2 years, let him mature a bit more. You do potentially have a Heinrich Brousseau or a Marcel Coetzee coming back from overseas. Brousseau is now playing in England. Marcel Coetzee, after 2 serious injuries over the last 2 years, to replace the Francois Lowe kind of player. We spoke about Francois Lowe pre-Australia. Never really hasn't quite done it, and I don't see him doing it again doing any. I don't see him contributing to a successful World Cup campaign. I see him be one of the players phased out. I'd just like to see a bit more mongrel, but controlled mongrel. I just found in those last 5 minutes against Australia as well, they had all the ball. They were frantic, and it was down to Faf de Klerk's franticness. And when I looked at him against England, and again, Dwayne Vermeulen protecting him, I found there was controlled chaos. He was in the opposition's face, he played at pace, but there was an urgency about him. Now there's just panic about him. And it's affecting whoever's playing on his outside, and they're playing side to side. I think he's regressed in the last three matches, Faf, and he's looking like the player they dropped 3 years ago. So he needs a very big game against the All Blacks, because it was in New Zealand.
Well, he's not going to have one, I can assure you of that.
It was in New Zealand where he where basically all started going wrong for him when he lost the plot there in the 41-13 defeat, and kind of never played again for South Africa.
You talk about those last couple minutes in that game where we were on the try line, and again, well, you know, without being a Dwayne Vermeulen sycophant, if he's taking the ball in crash position, he's getting 2 meters every time. And again, that gives a guy like Faf 2 meters extra, and guys clearing out. It just changes the whole dynamic of that team. Faf, you're right. I mean, he was frenetic, but he is a frenetic player.
I'm also not convinced about our midfield at the moment.
There's not much to be convinced about.
I know everyone says to me, get over it, get over Frans Steyn. I think Frans Steyn will be there next year for the World Cup year. The option of having a 12 like Frans Steyn with a Pollard at 10, you speak to any fullback or back three player, and they say when you've got a 10 and 12 who can both kick the ball 60 meters in terms of line kicks, and they're both physical, 100, 110 kilograms, it makes it very difficult to defend against because you don't know which one's going to be kicking their one channel out. So, and with Jan Serfontein also coming back, ideally I think moving to the forward, Lokanyo Am is coming through. He hasn't come through as quickly as I thought he would. Jesse Kriel, he has his moments, he's there and thereabouts. I think he's more explosive if he came off the bench because he can cover 15 and 13. But if you went with a Jan Serfontein, a Frans Steyn, a Pollard, I think that's a pretty decent 10, 12, 13 axis and very good footballers. That will be for next year. For now though, again, we've played this quick game, but we don't have the backs at 12 and 13 to create that kind of game. And if I see who New Zealand have chosen, they've gone straight back. Jack Udiu was not in the 23, Sonny Ball was in, coming back from injury and illness, he's pulled out. And they've gone with Ryan Crotty and Leonard Brown, who's been on the peripheral selections because of the physicality. So they're just expecting that big physical onslaught from the box. They weather it for 40 minutes and then skill starts taking over. So, you spoke about the spread a bit earlier. It is what?
23 and a half.
You haven't been wrong for the last 6 test matches. I think the last 6 or 7 Super Rugby rounds, you weren't wrong. Well, I think you may have got it wrong by 1 point in the Crusaders one.
I got the Argentina one. I thought the Boks would beat Argentina.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. I think everyone did in the world except 23 Argentinians. So 23-point spread. Interesting enough, the Boks have played at Westpac Stadium 6 times.
Yeah.
And they've lost all 6. They've played 3 other games. 2011 World Cup. They beat Wales by a point, beat Fiji, and then lost to...
Should we have any expectation?
Unless we're playing Fiji, I would say yes, have a lot, but we're actually not. We're playing the Fijians here. We're playing like the best Fijian players actually playing for the All Blacks. So they've lost all 6. They've lost on an average score by 30 to 13, and the All Blacks on average score 3 tries. So the best we can hope for is they don't get a bonus point. But I think they'll cover that 17, that historical 17 spread. I don't think we'll lose by more than 23.
Okay.
So explain to the punter how that one works again. Where does he put she put her money on the spread?
If you fancy New Zealand, then you're going to lay the point. You're going to give them minus 23 and a half to start the game. If you fancy the Boks, you take the points. You give them plus 23 and a half points to start the game. Again, the handicappers are in there, and they're not in gambling for love. 23 and a half is a good handicap, well handicapped. However, I've got a feeling, I've got no expectations, and I think if you're a South African fan and you go on a rant after this game, you should give your head a shake, because really, this game could get messy. And to me, if South Africa have not looked good defensively this year, that's the thing that Argentina put many points on them. Australia put how many points on? 24, 25 points on them. So to me, New Zealand could easily put 50. And it's how South Africa react to those tries. For the first 10 minutes, it can be close. It's going to be close at kickoff and for the first 10 minutes. And I think then it could get ugly. So I'm actually going to take the minus 23 for New Zealand, put 1,000 on it. I hate betting against the Boks, but I never bet with my heart. Always bet with my head. I'll take the minus 23, and I say New Zealand wins by 35.
Australia, Argentina, does anyone really care?
Well, punters care about every game. and I do, actually, because I think Argentina can upset Australia this week. They've shown they didn't disgrace themselves against New Zealand, but I wouldn't say they were brave and all these other accolades. They lost by 22 points, and they match up well with Australia. It's a tough game for Australia to play, actually. The handicap is plus 9.5 or minus 9.5, and I'm going to take the plus 9.5 with Argentina for 1,500, and may look for the upset. It should be that should be a good game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. It's also one of those games I think will be very unstructured. They'll slow it down as much as they can. It's one of those niggly games whenever they play Australia. but they are a side who gets up for the Springboks and gets up for the All Blacks Argentina because of the physicality. Australia doesn't get involved in their physicality and it upsets them a lot. They play them very technically. In the last 2 years, I've been surprised how they've gone to Argentina and hammered them there, when I thought this will be the time where Argentina will put one over Australia. So from my perspective of the reading of the two teams, I think Australia will win, and win with a little bit to spare as well.
Really? So we're disagreeing with you?
We are disagreeing with each other on one call.
Both calls, actually.
That's true. Yeah, I said it will be close. How did it change the game? I said 17 points is close. There was a time when we were losing 12-3 against the All Blacks, and we've been lambasted for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So so it's but a good weekend, Rugger. And then top 14 in France, there's a lot of South Africans there. You putting anything on that one?
I haven't studied those. I've just been studying the internationals. Usually study those on the day and look for a bit of value on the Currie Cup as well. So we got the Premier League this weekend, I think. So lots of sports again. I'll start looking at those things tomorrow. The one thing I wanted to chat about, and the biggest mistake that all punters make, is they don't have a plan. You know, you bet every day, or you look to try and chase money. I have 4 or 5 guys in the office. I come in every week. I come in and they go, "God, I should have just taken your advice." They've been saying that for 3 years, every week. So it means that, you know, and this is quite common, where people actually think that, you know, they bet emotionally and they chase stuff. Have a plan this weekend. Identify 2 or 3 games that where you think that the handicap has got it wrong, or you're certain is gonna win, and just bet on those games. And if you lose, you lose. You've made a bad investment. Your investment didn't go the way you thought it was going to go. And if you win, then don't see that as a catalyst to then having more bets on other things. Just bank that and put it away, and then play again the next week. Discipline is, if you can develop discipline in gambling, you'll make money. If you have no discipline and you just keep chasing and you want to bet on every single event that's going on, you're always going to lose money.
Just for the South African supporter that somehow patriotically just can't place a bet against the Springboks, the heart does rule the mind. Yeah. What options would you give that punter in terms of how could they bet on this game, during the game or elements around the game? What would be the 2 or 3 things you would go for?
Well, what I would look at doing there is giving my head a shake. and overcoming that heart-head combination. But if you, and I understand that, I mean, that just some patriotic people just will not place a bet against the Boks. So what I would look at doing is then look at how many points the bookies have said that they will score in the game, and if it's something you want to back and you think that, you know, I'm not sure what they're saying this week, they'll probably have the Boks to score 17 points. If you think the Boks can score more than 17 points, have that bet, or take the plus 23.5. You then betting that if they win, that's great, and if they don't lose by 23.5 or more, at least you can console yourself with a bit of cash.
And when you talk about take the totality in points, factor in Nigel Owens as the referee, and every test match between South Africa and New Zealand when he has refereed has been a big free-flowing game. Yeah. He allows it. He wants a spectacle, yeah, and he allows them to play. So if you're going with, say, the Boks would score 17, New Zealand would get to, say, 40. If you're going with the 23, you're looking at what, 50, 57 plus in terms of the total points scored in the game. Yeah,
you're right, and Nigel is one. He's Welsh, so he's obviously one of the best refs in the world. And he does. You're right. He likes the spectacle. He doesn't put up any bullshit, and he just lets the players get on with it, which is not great for the South Africans because they after last week's game in terms of their discipline. The problem with Wellington is this on Saturday. It's going to be very windy, blustery conditions, so that may not be conducive for a free-flowing game. I'm not sure. Like I said, the bookies have that thing well handicapped. So, but I do think the surprise will be on New Zealand running in a few tries, and then without strong leadership, I just see the heads dropping, and then it just being a procession in the second half.
And I think also perspective for the South African punter who still remembers the glory days of 1937, okay? We won 14 out of 54. Yeah. We won 2 out of our last 18 against New Zealand. Some may say that's 2 more than most have won, okay? But we've won 2, and Australia have won 3 out of about 25 against them, that expect South Africa to lose and to lose emphatically. Anything other than that will be a shock. And don't be upset and disappointed when the best team in the world that's won 101 of their last 113 tests beats us at home.
Yeah, it's simple. For South Africa to win, here's the few things that have to happen. The entire team has to play the best game it's ever played in its life. Pollard cannot miss a kick. There can be no knock-ons. Every line-out throw must go to the line-out jumper. Every scrum must be won. You might need to nick a couple against the head, and you want New Zealand to have the worst game it's ever had in its life. Then you're in with a shout.
Alternatively, be locked in the shed and not get onto the field.
Hope for an electricity failure, and the game to be abandoned.
This current squad of All Blacks reminds me of that magnificent Auckland Blues side right in the beginning, 96, 97. And Simon Poitevin, the ex-Wallaby, was commentating. They ran through the team sheet. And Phil Kern said to him, Poito, any weaknesses? And he said, yeah, mate, I've heard they're pretty poor in the kitchen. So I think I look at the current side and I think the same thing. It's like there aren't very many weaknesses, and it's one of those games that they have to play the worst, we have to play the best ever. And that happened pretty much in Cape Town. They still won by a point.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, look, it's I don't know. People are going to get sick of us talking about how good the All Blacks are, but unfortunately, they're better than what we're talking about. They're an incredible. I think they've lost 10 out of 110 tests. If that was, that's unheard of in any sport. I don't know a team in any sport, football, baseball, basketball, netball, curling, you name it. This team is incredible.
And look, you say people are going to get sick of it. I have to do a New Zealand radio thing tonight and apologise, because 4 weeks ago I said the rugby championship will be won by South Africa, New Zealand would end third. It's going to be won by New Zealand after Saturday. Yeah. Four rounds into the thing, they've won it again. It's irrelevant what they do in Argentina when they come to Loftus. I still believe we can knock them over at Loftus, because I don't know what team they're going to be bringing here in any case, and we will be a different animal at home. But I have been surprised at how good they've been in the rugby championship, because I didn't think they were that good against France. They were indifferent, but they've certainly stepped it up to another level, and they've built bloody good depth in their squad last year. They used 54 players last year through injury and unavailability, and it's showing this year. Yeah.
The only thing we can hope for is that they're peaking too early for the World Cup.
Yeah.
But
it'd be nice if we peaked once though for a World Cup.
Well, we did in '95 and 2007. I mean, that's why sports is played. You've given some good advice there on lowering your expectations on Saturday. Just try and enjoy the game. Just try and look for the positives. It's not going to be nice. We're going to get hammered. Thanks, guys, and chat to you next week.